Hi, it's Mary Margaret.
And it's Sarah.
And we're back. Sorry we've been gone for a while. We're going to try to do a better job of keeping up our vlogs because we know people like them. Tell us what you want to hear about.
But and they're fun for us to do, too.
Yeah, so. They are. Because we like to geek out. So
we are certified class geeks as well as certified class observers.
So geeking out today, I want to talk a little bit about regard for student perspective. Specifically, the indicator of student expression. I do find that people sometimes will code or misunderstand this particular indicator when they think if they hear the children speaking, then that's considered a high-level student expression. And I don't think that's true, and I was wondering what you thought.
I agree, because if we hear a lot of talk, children talking to each other, maybe children having social conversations with teachers, part of that we're going to pick up in positive climate with those social conversations under relationships. We'll also pick it up in positive climate as some peer-to-peer connections. But we're also going to pick it up in language modeling, where the intent of the dimension is to really make sure that kids have the opportunity to hear and practice using language. And for it to be true student expression, we have to see the teacher making an effort to figure out what the kids are thinking.
Which is part of the dimension definition.
Which is part of the dimension definition.
Right.
Okay, so yeah, it's those emphasis on students' interests, motivations, and points of view. And so we'll definitely pick up certainly their interests and their points of view.
By asking them, what do you think? How do you feel? Right.
Right, exactly.
So like if they were reading a story and the teacher says, what happened in the story, would that work?
No.
Okay.
And do you want to know why?
Sure.
Because they're geeks.
Are you getting my point of view?
I am getting your point of view. The reason that doesn't work is because that's recall. Right. So we could take that same story, and so maybe the first thing that happened in the story is that, you know, a dog runs up and knocks the girl's ice cream cone out of her hand. The question, well, what happened first? What happened second? Dog ran up, ice cream cone. It's recall. On the other hand, if the teacher says, well, how do you think that little girl felt when the dog knocked her ice cream cone out of her hand? That's getting inside their thinking. It's really understanding how they see the world, which is part of what we look for in that high-range description.
Got it. So one of the ways you can find out what people are thinking is ask them to tell you what they're thinking. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. So going back to language modeling and hearing the students speak, so I also think people sometimes get mixed up. If you just hear those social conversations, that's great, and we want children to use language. But what we're really looking at with language modeling is how is that teacher facilitating and stimulating the use of language. So really effective classroom, I would see a teacher having set the children up to have conversations. Talk to your partner about what you're building, or turn and tell your friend what you think is going to happen next in the book, which would be very high level eliciting for the students' talk. And then you would also hear them, you could link that to regard for student expression as well, because you would be hearing what they're thinking. Right. And regard is, I really see regard as sort of a springboard for higher order thinking conversations. Until you understand what it is that children are interested in, it's hard sometimes to pull them in to a deeper conversation. Right,
absolutely. And, you know, if someone comes up to me, and it could be you or anybody else, and starts talking about something that I have no interest in, I've got pretty good social graces, so I'm gonna nod, but I'm not really paying attention. But if you ask me about something I'm passionate about, then I probably will go much further in terms of my thinking, and we do need that with kids as well.
Right, and then that would also lead us to a contingent, a conversation for frequent conversation that would be contingent.
Right.
So I guess my point is that you can see a certain behavior, for instance, students talking and a teacher talking to them, and it can be noted and considered in many dimensions, but how we weigh that and the effectiveness of that is really going to go back to the dimension and how we're really focusing our attention for that specific behavior.
Right, and to kind of follow up, that's why I always say when you're assigning a code after you've gone through the whole process, you have to step back and look at the dimension as a whole and the extent to which these interactions support the intent of that dimension.
Right, because indicators are things that give us evidence, and no indicator is more important than the other indicator, and they work in tandem to serve the purpose of the dimension, the focus. So I always start with that dimension, really look at what am I thinking about here. I look at my evidence, and then at the very end, I say, okay, did this really meet the goal or the focus or the intent of the dimension? Okay. So we're going to shut this one off, but then we're going to come back and talk a little about why regard for child perspectives has something a little different in toddler.